something like that. But
The new Credo school?
heating system is a little different. It runs on forced hot water as opposed to steam. But now we start to, so some of this is new, but some of this is old. You start to get into it, you can see the kind of changing of, that is an old wall.
Yeah.
And we're definitely getting old. And as that water condenses, it's allowed to come through here. That's a trap that will only let water go out, no steam can go through here. And it picks up into a drain. And this pipe, there is 9,000 miles of condensate return pipe in this building that's all pitched perfectly to return to the boiler. It's just, the people that pipe this building forgot more about steam than I will ever know, because that was the only way we heated buildings back then, and they were true geniuses. The piping is just amazing to me that a building this big drains perfectly as it does. There's also some other utility access in here, but steam pipe. Steam pipe feeds, all the little insulated pipe is all steam, and those all go out. All the little small pipes that break off go out to feed individual pieces of heat, whether they're radiators in hallways or unit ventilators in classrooms. And watch your head when you step in here, with math, especially you, because there are a lot of places you won't go ahead. Running of the nuclear age, schools wanted to have fallout shelters. And these tunnels became the fallout shelter for the Spaulding High School. There was still some signs up until recent memory, you know, like the old civil defense kind of signs for fallout shelter. I think one of them is framed and tucked away on the slope of the auditorium. So in addition to all the tunnels we walked through are directly under building spaces, but all those guys that knew so much about steam piping knew that the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. So not always, there are 2 tunnels that run not under a building but under a parking lot, and this is one of them. So we'll just walk to a tunnel that goes back to the boiler room, and then from there we'll head up and take a look at that. Our parking lot over our head. Ooh.
So no tunnel to City Hall though, right?
No tunnels to City Hall.
Yes. No.
You guys can stay right there. I think there's a light switch right over here.
Want me to turn off that light now?
Yeah, that'd be great. Hi. So you're still under building space right there, but then as we pitch down, we're leaving the exterior, the envelope of the building, and now we're in a tunnel that runs under the parking lot. And it gets a little tighter in here. But again, the whole point of the tunnels, you can look at all the piping on your right, and above you is the supply utility access. And now we're going back into elevation of a building area. And I thought there was a light switch. Yeah, there is a light. There's a light switch right there. I'll get it after you guys go in here.
Yeah, you want me to grab it?
Oh yeah, if you would, that'd be great. Here we go. So now we're in the boiler room. And all are the primary sources of heat for the building now. And they're 150 horsepower gas-fired steam boilers. We have them open now because the heat shut down for the summer. But this tank underground right here is where all that piping, the miles and miles and miles of condensate piping, the reason that the tunnels exist, all drains back to this tank right here. And then this is a vacuum system that keeps all that condensate pipe at a negative pressure, which allows the water to flow back to here easier. And then we feed the water back into the boilers and the cycle starts again. So that's why we have steam tunnels. And they are in fact haunted, as everyone suspects, that one thing is true. Crawling with ghosts, you don't want to be down there by yourself. There you go. And I'm gonna lock this up behind us. Underneath, I'm moving water. A lot of this structure up here is dedicated to moving air. And it's such that to go from one part of the attic to the other, you actually have to walk through the ventilation system, which we're about to do. So we're going to enter the ductwork. And I'm going to leave my water bottle right here, and anyone else can do the same, because we're coming back. But here's a great example of an old 1939 this is an old 1939 motor, belt-driven, giant bearing. There's a centrifugal fan assembly here. This has been taken out of service and replaced by other equipment. But the cost of removing it exceeds the value you'd gain by removing it. The cost of scrap steel continues to go up. Someday it may become a viable project where it's worth tearing this stuff out. But in the meantime, it sits. So we're entering the ductwork. So now you're inside the ductwork. This particular fan, you can see, get some light in here. This is inside the fan. This is the giant bearing. Like today, a bearing that did this job would be a quarter of that size. This is just enormously overbuilt, and look, it lasted all those years. Yeah. So there's still a lot of old ductwork in here. One of the things that really between the exterior roof and the ceiling is this dead space where there's some ventilation equipment. This is a motor that drives some cables which the house lights are suspended from. This was installed in recent memory. For many years, if it was required that the lights got re-aimed, it would be done from up here. And you would lean down into that hole and you would reach down and point the light. And if you slipped, you were going 40 feet down onto the floor. Unfortunately, no one ever got hurt doing that, but it looked too risky to continue that practice. So we upgraded with some modern controls. So now the bar that the lights all rest on can be lowered. And you could work on the lights as you want and then raise the bar back up. These all hot rivets, like we don't make anymore. Like you've seen the pictures of people building skyscrapers in New York where they're tossing molten hot rivets to each other and slamming them in with hammers, and that's how this building was built. And this is the original paint, the original finish that was put on now with the original rivets, and it looks brand new, right? This is in 1939. This is steel pipe, 1/4 inch diameter, and it will go through all these. It's all abandoned now, but imagine what the work that went into putting all that control system together. And this would operate, it would turn our fans off and on, and it would open and close dampers, and it would control temperatures in space, it would control a whole piece of equipment and what it did. And yeah, it was a great system when it worked. 1948. And these are student autographs. Look close here, it's Mold Theory, 1950, 1951, 1955, 1949. Class of 40. So this elevated area, this is the Grierson Library. It had an elevated ceiling. This is the ceiling above the Grierson. And that's just some of the newer ventilation. I'll bring you down here to show you one kind of cool spot, okay? And then we'll head up into the clock tower.
Graduated with you.
You did? So man, you would have gone and it was cool up here. All of the ceilings were spray foam insulated from the inside. So on this ceiling here, just the other side of that is the slate roof outside, and that's all been insulated, which really helps keep it cooler in here. But more importantly, it helps us with heat loss in the winter months. It keeps the heating cost of the building down. There's a lot more graffiti here than there has been in other parts of the building. And according to the report I have, there are 2 ever in existence of the mechanical workings of the clock. And in the olden times, 1939, there was a mechanical clock, presumably in the principal's office, and that the principal could set the hands on that clock, and it would through some system of electrics, drive the clock up here, so you could keep time by that. There was a master clock, and this clock would follow whatever it did. That system failed, and sometime in the 70s or 80s, I lost my glasses. And Paul Dumont was a county commissioner. The Dumont Youth Recreational Area over by the county courthouse is named for Paul. And Paul lives in Rochester in Gonick. I thought he was deceased. And this system broke, and I spent months trying to come up with an electronic mechanical timer that would work to replace the thing Paul built. And I tried everything I could think of, and I just couldn't get it to work. And finally, in frustration, I threw my hands up and I dialed the phone number of Dumont Electric. And you imagine my surprise when a dead man picked up the phone and said, "Hello." So Paul, one of the reports of Paul's
passing were greatly exaggerated, and Paul was alive, and Paul rebuilt it for us again, and he left me with a bunch of drawings so that in the future, when neither he or I are still here, there'll be drawings that the next generation can do what they need to do with the clock tower. But what you're looking at here was a system Paul came up with, where there's a little camera looking at the clock, and you can set the time from here. If you wanted to change the time on the clock, you wouldn't have to go all the way into the tower to do it. You would do it from here. I've never availed myself of that feature, because if I was ever setting the time on the clock, I would want to go in the clock tower, because it's fun going in the clock tower. Why would I do it from here? But it's a great idea, and it's pretty cool. So that's Paul's invention right there. So we need to get across this pipe. The way I usually would do that is hold on to here, and here, the ductwork. And we're going to step over some nicely riveted steel. And we're going to go up our first ladder. And you can grab my hand if you ever need to. Yep. That's good, you're fine. Grab onto here. There you go. If you're going up, I'm here if you want to grab my hand. And ventilation system. There's exhaust air coming out of the building that's going out through these vents. And the neat thing about this room, if you will look from about 10 feet up, down, including the floor, the entire room is lead welded copper. It's copper sheeted, the entire thing, because they knew that wind driven snow and rain was going to be able to come in through these vents, and the water could get in here, and they didn't want to rot out the structure. Yeah. So the entire thing is leaded copper. Original motor, it's been rewound once by me, and probably once or twice before that. But when the timer comes around, it says time to energize the motor energizes and it runs, and it drives all these gears to turn these shafts. You can see how fast the motor goes, and then it gets slower and slower and slower and slower, and these shafts are moving at a snail's pace. It's going around once every 12 hours. Through a universal joint, into a drive system. So we'll start at the outside. The planetary gears are here because the minute hand moves faster than the hour hand on a clock. Wow. Yeah. And that's what this gearing does, because this shaft turns at one speed. And those allow the hour hand to move at one speed and the minute hand to move at another speed. See it? Mm-hmm. That was it. And this is more of Paul Dumont's genius at work over here. I talked about some parts he made all by himself. And this disc right here has a hole drilled in it and a photocell. And you'll watch when the thing energizes, we're turning this shaft once. Because turning that shaft once per minute is what needs to happen to make everything else work right. And this is what Paul designed to make that happen. And yeah, pretty amazing stuff.
If you wanna go up into that last, go
Yeah,
up.
you better.
You gotta bring your own ladder up
I was
there.
gonna say this.
I think we're good.
What's up there?
It's just there's one
Just the
sprinkler head up
Oh.
there, that iron pipe was fire suppression that was added recently.